I always knew something would eventually shift between us. I just never expected it to begin with a fogged-up mirror and the wrong turn of a door handle. The bathroom was the one place in our apartment where I could breathe without pretending. Not because of the cracked tiles or the unreliable water pressure, but because it was the only room that felt like mine. In a cramped two-bedroom, that kind of privacy felt rare. I was halfway through brushing my teeth, shirtless, a towel hanging low around my hips, when the door creaked open. No, not just the soft drag of wood against the floor and footsteps that moved like they belonged there. He did it all the time, walking in without warning. But somehow this time felt different. "Dude, I need my charger," he said casually, like I wasn't standing there with toothpaste foaming at my mouth. He was already halfway inside before I even turned. Our eyes met in the mirror, his catching mine like he didn't expect to actually see me there. He froze for a heartbeat, then looked away too quickly as if nothing had happened. Even though his gaze had lingered a little too long, "Top drawer," I mumbled through the toothbrush. He didn't say thanks, just grabbed the charger and walked out like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. My heart was still racing. That was typical of him, showing up in moments that felt too raw, too unguarded. He had this effortless way of existing, laughing at his own dumb jokes, sprawled across the couch, with one sock missing, blasting late-night music loud enough to shake the walls, yet somehow making me feel less alone. We'd been roommates for almost a year, thrown together by a university housing app. He was all denim jackets, lazy confidence, and a voice so deep he could make Past the Salt sound like a secret. Meanwhile, I was the careful, quiet, introverted one who overthought every word. We weren't supposed to work, but somehow we did. Late-night pizza runs, quiet morning coffees. In this strange rhythm somewhere between friends and something I didn't dare name, there were moments I couldn't forget. The night he fell asleep beside me during a movie and didn't move a wavin' when I didn't either. The time our fingers brushed, reaching for popcorn, and he didn't pull back. The way he sometimes looked at me like he knew something I hadn't said out loud. Still, I buried everything, because what could come of it? He dated girls. He teased me about my emotional playlists. He laughed when I alphabetized the fridge. And yet every time he stood too close or smiled too long at something I said, that small, stubborn hope sparked again. This weekend, we were heading upstate for his cousin's graduation. He'd invited me weeks ago, called it a chill escape, just the two of us at his aunt's cabin. Separate rooms, obviously. I said yes before thinking it through. Now, with our duffel bags by the door and a half-empty bottle of body wash in my hand, I wondered if this trip would finally push me over the edge I'd been balancing on. He knocked on the door frame this time, maybe making up for the earlier walk-in. "Ready in 10?" he asked, leaning in with that familiar smirk, half apology, half dare. I nodded carefully. "Yeah, just finishing." When he disappeared, I stared at the mirror like it might give me answers. Something was shifting. I felt it in the way he looked at me and in the way I'd stopped pretending not to care. Whatever happened out there in the quiet woods, something between us would either break or fall into place. The drive out of the city was warm sunlight streaking across the windshield, a playlist we argued over for 20 minutes before giving up. His loud road trip anthems alternating with my softer, moodier picks. Like everything else with us, it was a push and pull that somehow found balance. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, singing off-key to a song I secretly loved. I shot him a sideways glare. "You know you're completely off-key, right?" He grinned. "I'm expressive. There's a difference. Obviously. You just don't get art." I rolled my eyes and hid a smile. Watching the city fade into open sky, it was strange how easily he'd slipped into my life, how I didn't realize something was missing until he started filling the empty spaces. We'd met 10 months ago during a painfully awkward roommate interview. I came with a checklist. He showed up late with a gas station iced coffee and a half-sipped hoodie. I nearly crossed him off until he recognized the graphic novel on my desk and spent 10 minutes excitedly talking about the author's other work. He wasn't faking it. He actually knew it. Since then, we'd synced grocery lists, laundry days, and somehow ended up falling asleep on opposite ends of the same couch more times than either of us admitted. He learned I tapped my pen 3 times when I was unsure of something. I learned he tugged at his shirt collar when he got tired. Small things. Quiet things. Almost intimate, but never spoken aloud. The cabin came into view just after noon wooden. A little crooked, tucked into a clearing that smelled of pine and earth. He parked and stretched with a groan loud enough to wake wildlife. "My back is destroyed," he muttered. "You sure you don't want me driving on the way back?" I teased. He raised a brow. "Remember? You said you don't trust me behind the wheel." That was in a loving way, right? I laughed and pulled my bag from the back seat. Inside, the cabin was cozy faded rugs, warm sunlight, the faint scent of dust. His aunt had left snacks and a note about the canoe key. He dropped his backpack on the couch and collapsed beside it. 2 bedrooms, I said, reading the labels on the doors. About that. He started, suddenly very interested in the floor. One's being renovated. Ceiling issue. We're sharing. I stopped mid-step. "You're kidding," he shrugged. "Only 1 bed, but it's huge. Don't worry. I don't snore much." "I've heard you snore," I said automatically. I opened the bedroom door. He wasn't lying on bed, tucked beneath a window overlooking the trees. The space felt small. Close. My heart thudded hard. "I can sleep on the floor," I offered. Even though my back ached at the thought, he leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, eyes lingering on me in a way I couldn't read. "No need," he said softly. "We've literally fallen asleep on the couch together like 5 times. "Yeah, but this feels different." He didn't respond right away. When I finally looked back, he was already watching me, not in his usual teasing way, but quiet, steady, focused. "Hey," he said softly, "we'll make it work. Unless you're scared, you'll roll over and cuddle me in your sleep or something." I forced a laugh, as if, but the slight curve of his lips told me he wasn't entirely joking. The rest of the day carried the same strange mix of comfort and awareness. We unpacked 8 chips on the porch and completely failed at skipping stones across the lake. I took photos of the trees while he struck dramatic model poses in front of them, making me laugh harder than I wanted to admit. But underneath all the noise, there was a steady, quiet awareness of how close he was, how easy it would be to reach out and touch him, and how dangerous that thought had become. That night, we got ready for bed in the tiny bathroom, sharing the single sink. He brushed his teeth beside me, shirtless, hair still damp from his shower. Our shoulders bumped once. "Then again, move over," I mumbled. "I'm literally on the edge." "You take up more space than humanly possible," he smirked, spitting into the sink. "You're tense." "No, I'm not." "You are. You're doing that thing where your jaw tightens. You only do it when you're anxious. Or when you're about to say something you don't want to." I glanced at him, startled. "You notice that?" He shrugged. "You notice when I pull at my collar, don't you?" My chest tightened, and for a moment all I could do was stare at the sink. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I guess I do." He looked at me through the mirror. "You're not that hard to read. You just think you are." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't. We crawled into bed on opposite sides. The mattress firm but surprisingly comfortable. The room was quiet except for the rustle of leaves outside and the soft rhythm of our breathing. He lay on his back, hands behind his head, staring up at the ceiling. "You good?" he asked after a moment. "Yeah," I said, but I wasn't, not even close. Because every inch of space between us felt like a lie, and part of me wondered if he felt it too. The next morning, we set out to hike the trail, looping around the lake mostly, because he wouldn't stop teasing me about needing fresh air before my city. Lungs gave out. I packed water and granola bars, while he tossed a banana at me like we were. Gearing up for some epic adventure, the trail started wide and easy. Sunlight filtering through the trees, the ground soft with pine needles. We naturally fell into step, him slightly ahead, smirking each time I lagged behind to take pictures of odd-shaped rocks or trees that looked straight out of a fantasy novel. "You always do that," he said, nodding at my phone as I snapped another shot. "Take a photo, stare at it, then take another from the same angle." I like finding the right frame, sighed dramatically. So artistic. So tortured. Shut up, I said, but my smile gave me away. That was just how we were teasing, easy quiet. But today, something pulsed underneath it. A current I couldn't ignore. Maybe it was the way he grabbed my wrist to pull me along when I slowed down. His touch warm and casual, yet all I could think about. Maybe it was the way I caught myself watching the shift of his shoulders under his t-shirt, or the light flush at the back of his neck when he laughed too hard. Or maybe it was simply that, no matter how many times I told myself we were only friends, every part of me wanted more. We reached a rocky overlook halfway through. The view opened wide endless trees, the glint of the lake, a sky stretched still and bright. I sat on a flat stone, sipping water, trying not to let the silence feel heavy. He nudged my foot lightly. This was a good idea. Yeah. He nodded. You've been quieter lately? I figured you needed a reset or something. I looked at him. You noticed that too? He shrugged, though his eyes stayed on mine. You don't talk as much when something's on your mind. I almost said something, then almost let everything spill out. But the words stuck in my throat, like they always did. He looked away first, stretching. Come on, let's see if we can reach the stream before noon. We didn't make it. About 10 minutes later, we reached a narrow bend where the trail had eroded from a small landslide. The dirt looked unstable, and we both hesitated. I think we can still cross, he said, stepping forward before I could stop him. The second his foot hit the edge, the ground gave way. He stumbled, arms flailing, and I lunged instinctively. Grabbing his forearm and yanking him back harder than I meant to, he crashed into me, and we tumbled backward into the dirt in a breathless heap. I felt every inch of his chest pressed to mine, the sharp inhale he took, his hand gripping my side like he was still steadying himself. Neither of us moved. Jesus. I breathed. He laughed softly, still sprawled on top of me. You really don't like nature, huh? You almost died, I snapped, my voice cracking. Why would you step there? I thought it would hold. Well, it didn't. He shifted to roll off me, but not before his hand brushed across my stomach. A fleeting touch, but enough to tighten my skin, enough to steal my breath. I sat up quickly, brushing dirt from my hoodie, even though my hands were shaking. You okay? He asked, suddenly serious. Fine, you're not hurt? I'm fine. He studied me, brow furrowed. You're mad? I'm not mad. I stopped, pressing my lips together. The words I wasn't saying felt louder than the ones I was. Just what? He asked quietly now, no jokes this time. What were you about to say? I don't know, I admitted. Forget it. But forgetting wasn't that simple. When the path ahead turned out to be blocked, we had to turn back and take the longer way around. The trail climbed uphill, slower and heavier. Clouds gathered overhead, dimming what little light was left, even though the forecast had promised clear skies. The air between us felt like the weather, thick, charged, waiting to break. At one point, my foot twisted on a root. A sharp pain shot through my ankle, and I stumbled with a gasp. He was at my side instantly. What happened? I'm fine, I lied, trying to keep walking. He didn't believe me. Sit down. I don't need to sit, he repeated, softer this time. I finally gave in, sinking down on a patch of moss. He knelt in front of me, lifting my foot carefully. Does it hurt here? He asked, pressing lightly near the joint. I flinched just a little. His brow tightened. We should head back slowly. I'll help you. You're not walking back alone. Ah-da-da. He stood and offered his hand. I hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm, grounding. He slipped an arm around my waist to support me. Suddenly, walking became the least of my problems. His body was warm and steady against mine, his scent a mix of clean sweat and soap filling the air between us. Every step felt too loud, like my heartbeat was echoing through the trees. You okay? He asked again, his voice close to my ear. Yeah, just tired. He didn't respond, but he didn't let go either. By the time we reached the cabin, my ankle throbbed and my thoughts were worse. He eased me onto the couch, then disappeared into the kitchen for ice and pain medicine. When he came back, he knelt again, wrapping the ice pack in a towel before pressing it gently to my ankle. His fingers brushed my skin lightly, but even that small touch felt impossible to ignore. "Better?" he asked. I looked down at him. His face was close to close. I could see the freckles across his nose, the faint stubble on his jaw, the crease of worry between his brows. I swallowed. "Yeah, thanks." He didn't move away. Not right away. His eyes met mine, and something passed between Uzra, unspoken. I felt it. I knew he felt it too. He broke the silence with a small smile. "Guess I'm not totally useless." "You never were," I said, softer than I meant to. We stayed there a moment too long, his hand near my leg, his gaze locked on mine. And even without words, the silence said enough. Something had shifted, and there was no going back. By the time the sun slipped behind the trees, the cabin was wrapped in gold and shadow. I sat on the couch with my ankle propped up, pretending to scroll through my phone but mostly staring at the same screen. He moved around the kitchen, putting together a simple dinner-boxed mac and cheese and leftover chicken. It was quiet. Too quiet. It's a kind of silence that no longer felt comfortable. He leaned on the counter while the noodles boiled. Arms crossed as he watched me. Or maybe studied me. He'd been doing that more since the hike, looking at me like I was some puzzle he couldn't quite solve. And I was trying to look fine, unbothered, like I wasn't replaying every second of him holding me up on that trail. "Want me to bring your plate when it's ready?" he asked, his voice low. "Sure," I said, not really hungry. He nodded and turned away. I watched his back, the curve of his neck, and tried not to think about how badly I wanted to say something. Anything. The words pressed against my chest like they were trying to escape. I didn't know when I'd started falling for him. Maybe it had always been there, buried under jokes, routines, and late-night conversations. But it wasn't funny anymore. It felt real and terrifying. Dinner came and went in fragments of small talk. I forced food down. He barely touched his plate. The tension between us was thick now. It's no longer hidden by tiredness or sarcasm after the dishes. He grabbed 2 beers from the fridge and handed me one without a word. Then he slid open the back door. "Come out for a sec?" "It's clear now." I hesitated, but nodded. He helped me up gently, his hands steady under my arm as he guided me outside. The air was crisp with the scent of pine and damp earth. Above us, the sky stretched dark and wide, stars flickering quietly. We stood there for a long time, side by side, sipping beer and not looking at each other. "I thought you were mad earlier," he said suddenly. I wasn't. "You didn't talk much after you almost fell. I exhaled slowly. I don't know. Scared." He looked at me then, eyes sharp but soft. "Scared you'd get hurt?" I let out a shaky breath. Scared something would happen, and I wouldn't know how to deal with it. He turned toward me fully, like he felt that same weight. "You've been acting different lately," I said quietly. "So have you," he replied. "Yeah." I set my beer down on the railing, suddenly needing both hands to steady myself. "You've been touching me more. Watching me like you're trying to say something." He didn't deny it. His silence was an answer on its own. My voice came out smaller. "Why?" He took a slow sip of beer, like buying time. When he finally set the bottle down beside mine, he didn't look away. "Because I'm confused," he said at last. "Because I've been feeling something and trying not to, and I don't know what it means." My chest tightened, my heart beat loud in my ears. "You're not the only one," I whispered. He stepped closer. "You feel it too?" I nodded. "I have for a while. I just didn't want to ruin anything." The air between us pulsed with everything unsaid. The stars didn't move, but the world beneath them felt smaller, just the space between us. He dragged a hand through his hair. Looking away briefly, "I've never felt this way about a guy before." "I know. I don't fully understand any of this either. I just know that when you went quiet, it scared me like I was losing something I didn't realize mattered this much." I looked at him, steady and unsure. "You never lost me." He met my eyes again, and this time he didn't turn away. "I think about you." he admitted, the words rushing out like they'd been waiting too long. More than I should. I notice small things, how you bite your lip when you're deep in thought, or how you talk in your sleep when you're overwhelmed. I keep finding excuses to be near you, even when there isn't a reason. My breath caught. That's not strange. It feels like it should be. Why? His expression tightened. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. You're my friend. You're safe. You're the person I laugh with, watch bad movies with. And now I can't stop wondering what it would be like to be closer to you. I blinked, the moment shifting around us. He stepped nearer. Is that okay to say? I nodded, too stunned to form words, then finally found my voice. Yeah, it's more than okay. His voice softened in a way I'd never heard before. So what do we do with this? I drew in a shaky breath. We stop pretending it isn't real. He studied my face, searching for a sign. I don't want to mess this up, he whispered. You won't. What if I do? My hand moved before I could stop it, brushing gently against his. Then we figure it out together. He moved in slowly, giving me all the space to pull back. I didn't. I couldn't. His hand landed lightly at my waist, careful and unsure, and my breath tightened. When his forehead rested against mine, I exhaled and closed my eyes. I'm scared, he murmured. Me too, I whispered, but I still want to try. And then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed or dramatic. It was cautious, learning soft drill in a way that settled deep. When I kissed him back, something inside both of us unlocked. His hands tightened as if anchoring himself, and my fingers curled gently into his hair as the moment tilted beautifully around us. When we finally pulled away, breath uneven, he leaned his forehead against mine. That was, he started. Yeah, I said, smiling without meaning to. It really was. He let out a quiet, dazed laugh. I've been wanting to do that all day. I nudged my nose against his. What took you so long? He looked at me, eyes warm. I was waiting for a sign. You never needed one, I whispered. I've been here the whole time. He kissed me again, slower this time, steadier. And under the quiet night sky wrapping around the cabin, I knew something had shifted for good. We weren't just friends anymore. We were something more. And for the first time, that didn't frighten me. It felt like coming home. The room felt warmer after that. Nothing in the cabin had changed, but something in the space between us had. We sat together on the couch, shoulders brushing, legs stretched out, my ankle resting on the pillow he'd fluffed with way too much focus. We didn't talk much at first. We didn't need to. Every glance carried the honesty we'd avoided for so long. Eventually, he nudged me with his elbow. So, was that kiss okay? Or do I owe you a better one now that I know what I'm doing? I smirked. You want feedback already? I learned fast, he said. I laughed, relaxing. You're ridiculous. He leaned in, eyes playful. And do you like that about me? I really do, I said softly. His smile deepened into something more thoughtful. This feels unreal, but in a good way. The best way, I replied. We fell into a quiet, comfortable pause. He reached for my hand and laced his fingers with mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. Maybe it always had been. I meant what I said earlier, he murmured. I've never felt like this before, not about anyone. My heart thudded. Does that scare you? He thought for a moment. Yeah, but not enough to run from it. That made me smile. I squeezed his hand. I've been scared too. Scared that saying something would ruin us. But staying silent was starting to hurt more. He looked at me with full understanding. I don't want to go back to before. Me neither. He shifted closer, pulling my hand gently into his lap. So what now? I shrugged, unable to hide my smile. Now we take it slow. Together. You always say that, he said, smiling. I like it. I mean it. I know you do. Then he lifted my hand and pressed a soft kiss to the back of it, and my heart stumbled. Somehow that simple touch felt even more intimate than the kiss itself. The space between us felt new, open, honest, fragile, and safer than ever. People might be surprised, he said after a moment. About us? I asked. Yeah, he smiled. but they'll adjust. You're braver than you think, you know that? Only with you, I admitted. He laughed, his real laugh, the one that crinkles his eyes. He looked at me, expression softening. Can I tell you something kind of embarrassing? I raised an eyebrow. After tonight, nothing can embarrass you. He rubbed his neck sheepishly. Last month, I almost told you. You fell asleep on the couch during that terrible sci-fi movie, and I just looked at you thinking, this is someone I want to fall asleep next to for a long time. I stared at him. Why didn't you say something? He shrugged. You looked peaceful, and I was terrified. I leaned my head on his shoulder. You should have said it. Yeah, he whispered. But I think I like how it finally happened better. Me too. The fire crackled softly. I shifted until my head rested in his lap, and he didn't hesitate. His fingers slid into my hair, gentle and slow. What happens when we go back? He asked quietly. You know real life, friends, family, everything. We handle it one step at a time, I said. No pressure. Just honesty. He nodded. I don't want to be confused anymore. Then don't be, I whispered. You're allowed to want this. And you? He asked, voice low. He looked down at me with something bright and fragile in his eyes. And somehow, that was enough. We didn't know what the future looked like. There would be conversations, awkward moments, decisions to make. But none of that mattered right then. What mattered was his thumb tracing slow circles against my shoulder. Our breaths steady and close, and the quiet peace of finally not hiding anymore. We didn't need perfect. We just needed this. Morning arrived, soft and unhurried. Not awkward, just quiet. It's like the world had paused to give us a little more time inside our own bubble before everything started up again. Pale golden light stretched across the cabin's wooden walls. I was already awake, lying on the couch, with the blanket half draped over me. He sat on the floor by my feet, leaning back against the couch, a warm cup of coffee in his hands. We didn't speak for a while. It wasn't the silence of uncertainty, just the kind that settles naturally when words aren't required. I watched him, shoulders loose, hair still messy from sleep. The soft curve of his mouth made my chest ache in a way that felt strangely comforting. How's the ankle? He asked without looking up. Better, I said, rotating it gently. Not marathon ready, but I'll survive. He smiled, finally lifting his eyes. Good. I'm enjoying having an excuse to take care of you. I snorted. You're enjoying it way too much. He grinned and leaned his head back against the couch, right where my hand rested. His cheek brushed lightly against my fingers. I didn't pull away last night, he said quietly. We could head out later instead of rushing. You sure? You insisted we needed to be out by 10? Yeah, well, I think I've earned the right to break my own rules. I tilted my head. Just want more time alone with me, huh? Exactly. He said it without hesitation, and the honesty in his voice made me smile harder than I meant to. It amazed me how different everything felt now that everything was out in the open. Lighter, easier, and somehow deeper all at once. I'm not going to lie, I said after a moment. I'm still terrified about what happens next. I know. He reached up and gently threaded our fingers together. But I'd rather face it with you than go back to pretending none of this happened. Same, I said, my voice softer than I intended. He looked up at me, eyes warm but steady. Then let's not pretend, not with our friends and not with ourselves. Let's just be whatever we are. Together. Quiet stretched between us. But this time, it felt like a promise beginning to take shape. We packed slowly, not because we were dragging our feet, but because neither of us wanted to rush the ending of this chapter, folding blankets, brushing crumbs from the counter, sliding our bags into the car. Every small motion felt like part of something meaningful. A calm ritual marking the close of one part of our story and the start of another. When we stepped onto the porch for one last look, he reached into his pocket. Almost forgot, he said, pulling out a tiny keychain shaped like a small compass, the metal worn smooth. This was on the cabin key, he said, placing it in my palm. Thought you should keep it, so you can always find your way back. I looked down at it, then up at him. My throat tightened in a warm, steady way. "I'll keep it safe," I said, closing my hand around it. "Even if the compass doesn't work," teased. "It's symbolic," I said, smiling. "Exactly." We stood there for a moment, watching the wind slip through the trees. I reached out and gently took his hand. He glanced at our fingers intertwined, then up at me. "This okay?" he asked. "It's more than okay." And it was. There was something grounding in the feel of his hand in mine, like all the tangled emotions had finally settled into something simple and real. As we walked down the steps toward the car, he nudged me lightly. "So, do we tell people? Or keep it quiet for a bit?" "That depends," I said. "You ready for your mom to send me 20 questions the second she finds out?" "Oh, absolutely not," he groaned. "Then we wait." "Fair." We slid into the car, the doors closing in perfect sync. For the first time on the trip, the silence between us didn't feel like something we had to fill. It felt like something we were sharing. He glanced over before turning the key. "One last thing. Shoot. What's the first thing you're doing when we get back?" I smiled. "Ordering a pizza. And maybe kissing you again." "Depends on how charming you are during the drive." He grinned. Challenge accepted. As the engine hummed to life and the road stretched ahead, I turned the compass keychain over in my hand. It didn't point north. It didn't need to be, because this time I already knew exactly where I was going, and I wasn't going there alone.